Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to unpack a profoundly moving story called Mother's Book, or Ma Ki Kitab. It's this incredibly beautiful narrative that reveals the sheer weight of poverty, the absolute power of a mother's sacrifice, and how education can just completely transform a life. So let's break down how this story uses some really simple elements to showcase monumental human resilience.
But before we dive into the details, think about this for a second. How much can a simple, everyday notebook change a child's entire life? Seriously, keep that in the back of your mind. We so often take our basic tools for learning completely for granted, don't we? But to really grasp the weight of this story, we need to reframe how we look at just a few blank pieces of paper bound together. The story immediately hits us with this incredible contrast. You've got the bleak physical reality of a struggling family, mud walls, a tin roof, and the faint glow of a small lantern. It's an environment entirely defined by lack. But up against that harsh reality, you have a mother's soaring, boundless ambition. Their physical space might be confined, but her vision for her son's future, it has absolutely no ceiling.
Part 1. Chintu's humble village life. So the source text paints a pretty, somber, and heartbreaking reality. We meet 10-year-old Chintu and his mother, Sarita, living in a small village. The text notes that Chintu's father actually recently passed away due to an illness, and that leaves this heavy, palpable silence in a home that is already stripped down to its barest essentials. The detail that really strikes me here is the father's old hat. The story tells us that just looking at this hat makes Chintu fall completely silent. It's such a brilliant narrative device, right? It's a physical object that anchors the grief and the sudden, forced maturity of this young boy.
Part 2. A mother's unwavering hope.
We get a really clear picture of Sarita's daily grind here. She spends her days doing physical labor, sewing clothes in other people's houses. Imagine the sheer physical exhaustion of that kind of daily work. Yet, the critical detail is what happens when she returns home. No matter how incredibly tired she is, she consistently brings out an old book and a notebook for Chintu. Every single evening, she is deliberately planting the vital seed of education right in the middle of their hardship.
And this brings us to a phenomenal quote that really captures her core philosophy. Sarita tells him, "Son, we don't have many things, but education can take you very far." She isn't sugarcoating their poverty. She openly acknowledges they don't have much, but she immediately pivots to agency and empowerment. She's reminding us and him that while their pockets might be empty today, their future remains absolutely boundless if he commits to learning.
Part 3. A dream met with laughter.
Before we look at Chintu's experience, think about this. Have you ever felt judged for what you lack, especially when sharing a dream as innocent as the ones you had when you were a kid? Think back to when a teacher asked you what you wanted to be. It's a real moment of vulnerability, right? You're putting your purest hopes out into the room.
In the text, the school teacher asks the class about their future ambitions, while the other kids are shouting out typical aspirations, a doctor or a police officer, an athlete. Chintu softly declares this. He says he wants to be a teacher so that no child is deprived of education. It is such an incredibly mature and noble dream, born directly from his own struggles. But the response? His classmates actually mock and laugh at him, not because his dream is bad, but simply because they see his worn-out, torn notebook. They literally judge his immense potential solely on his immediate material poverty.
The impact of that kind of mockery is just immediate. Chintu goes home feeling deeply sad and completely defeated. The harsh judgment of his peers momentarily crushes his spirit. It's a very raw depiction of how external cruelty can make the poverty someone lives in suddenly feel like this insurmountable, suffocating wall, blocking out the very hope Sarita works so hard to build every night.
Part 4. The gift of a notebook. Okay, let's pause here and let this profound piece of wisdom from Sarita really sink in. She tells him, books may be new or old, but dreams in them are always new. What a powerful way to reframe his situation. She is entirely decoupling the value of his ideas and his intellect from the physical condition of his possessions. Honestly, it's an absolute masterclass in emotional intelligence and parenting.
But Sarita, she doesn't just offer words. She backs her philosophy up with concrete action. The story details how she dips into what must be incredibly meager savings to buy a small, new notebook and a pencil. For them, this is a massive financial sacrifice. And when she gives it to him, Chintu joyfully embraces her. She sacrificed her own financial safety net simply to restore her son's dignity and his pure joy for learning.
Part 5. Fulfilling a mother's dream.
Now notice how rapidly a mother's belief, combined with just a simple tool,
propels Chintu to academic success. He arrives at school with his new notebook, head held high. He works diligently, correctly answers the teacher's questions, and earns the ultimate classroom reward, the explicit praise of his teacher. Just like that, the cycle of defeat is broken.
And then the teacher delivers this line that just beautifully counters all that previous mockery from his classmates. The teacher says, "A hard-working child is never small." This validation is huge. It reinforces Sarita's lesson from earlier, that effort, intellect, and dedication wildly outshine material wealth. The physical size of his house or the state of his notebook does not dictate the size of his character.
And Chintu fully internalizes this. He smiles, and he writes a solemn promise in large letters in his brand new notebook. "I will study, fulfill mother's dream." He has taken his mother's sacrifice and turned it into his own driving mission. His motivation isn't just about avoiding mockery anymore. It is fueled by a profound gratitude and love. The text closes with this highly cinematic, incredibly moving final scene. Chintu and Sarita are sitting outside their home, studying together. Above them, the night sky is filled with shining stars, a really stark contrast to that small, dim lantern inside, symbolizing the bright, expansive future they're building. Chintu promises that one day he will make his mother very happy, and Sarita's reply is absolute perfection. She tells him that his education is already her biggest happiness. That beautiful exchange solidifies that the journey of learning itself is the greatest reward.
To summarize our analysis today, this story proves a really powerful, universal truth. Even in the absolute most difficult of times, the combination of education, relentless hard work, and the unwavering support of a parent can give a life an entirely new direction. It shows us that determination and maternal love possess the very real power to rewrite anyone's destiny, no matter where they start.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought. Who was the Sarita in your own life? Who was the person, a parent, a teacher, a mentor, that made a sacrifice, big or small, to ensure that your dreams stayed brand new? Think about them today, and remember the power of passing that gift of belief on to someone else. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredible story.